What if I told you the Bahrain you now know will soon be a memory? Bahrain's largely Shiite opposition continues its struggle against the Sunni royal family, even though it has met little international support. I've come up with 5 reasons why the Al Khalifa family will remain in dispute with its constituents until a regime change occurs. Reason number 1. Stalled reforms. In response to protests demanding greater democracy that began in February 2011, the ruling Al Khalifa family promised constitutional reform, but little has been delivered. Even reform-minded royals such as Crown Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa fear that a rush to democratic reform would be a start of a slippery slope, allowing the opposition to one day dispense with the system as a whole. To be fair, the Al Khalifa do not claim absolutist, divinely inspired authority like the Saudi royals, nor do they preside over a Syria-style one-party system. Bahrain has multi-party elections and opposition media. But let's be clear, even after decades of piecemeal reform and regular bouts of political unrest, the kingdom remains a highly authoritarian state, where elected legislative bodies hold little control over a narrow royal elite. Reason number 2, the growing sectarian divide. The fact that senior government posts and positions and the security apparatus seem almost exclusively reserved for Sunnis has always added a distinct sectarian dynamic to Bahraini politics. Any political opening would inevitably empower the Shiite majority. Bahrain's protest movement is overwhelmingly Shiite, and fears of a Shiite-dominated government have led most Sunnis, including those critical of Khalifa, to side with the regime. For its part, the government consciously encourages suspicions of protesters' alleged loyalties to the Shiite Iran. Shiite protesters, on the other hand, are outraged over the brutality of the Sunni security force, which includes mercenaries from Sunni Arab countries. Sunni-Shiite tension is boiling, and the Gulf may now be too wide to bridge. Reason number 3, the economic crisis. Bahraini rulers lack the luxury of abundant oil reserves to keep the masses happy with massive welfare programs and cozy government jobs. In 2012, petroleum production and refining accounted for 77% of Bahrain's export receipts, 87% of government revenues, and 19% of GDP. However, Bahrain has emptied their reserves and will need to rely on support from Sunni families in Saudi, the essential mother state, to continue economic diversification. The Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, has pledged $10 billion in budgetary support, but ongoing unrest is deepening Bahrain's economic crisis. Shiite protesters at the forefront of regular clashes with the police come from low-income areas on the outskirts of capital, Manama. They are young, unemployed, and angry, which is a recipe for hostility and action. The regime may maintain dialogue with moderate opposition parties, such as Al-Wafaq, but there's no short fix for income disparities and growing social tension. The Al-Wafaq may be the only saving grace to the Bahraini political system in that its policies lean toward the abandonment of the human rights violations maintained by the House of Khalifa and the Gulf monarchies in general. However, withdrawing seats and boycotting elections do not tend to increase influence. Reason number 4, GCC intervention. The principal safety valve of Khalifa rulers is the staunch support from Saudi Arabia and other GCC members who sent troops to Bahrain in March 2011 to quell the unrest. A total of 1,000 Saudi soldiers and 500 UAE military policemen had invaded the island with full intent to immobilize the efforts any way they could. Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Salehi responded to GCC's move by demanding that Bahraini leaders be wise and not use violence in their handling of anti-government protests. However, the protesters were crushed and injuring 200. Wealthy Gulf monarchies simply can't allow one of their own to go down. While the U.S. is reluctant to poke at the last bastion of pro-American rulers in the Middle East, even with so many influential landmarks in the area, mainly the U.S. Fifth Fleet, this makes the downfall of the Bahraini regime very unlikely in the near term, but it seems that the GCC intervention made the government even less compelled to gamble with an unpredictable process of political opening. At the same time, the presence of foreign Sunni or Wahhabi troops in this small island can only radicalize the Shiite opposition. And finally, for reason number 5, the Saudi-Iranian rivalry. Unfortunately for Bahrainis, the future of their country has become a seemingly never-ending battle between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Bahraini and Saudi governments have long claimed that Iran is the chief reason for domestic unrest, although we have yet to see any solid evidence of that. But this could change. Faced with hostile Sunni states and a U.S. government that has another agenda, some Shiite groups might eventually turn to Iran for help. If Iran were to somehow infiltrate one of the strictly Sunni governments of the Gulf monarchies, there could be harsh ramifications that may even lead to war. In reflecting on Davidson's After the Sheiks, maybe his claims weren't so far from the truth, at least given Bahrain's current situation. The coming collapse of the Gulf states may take some more time than he thought, but with such global infamy for the violations made in the Human Rights Department, maybe their rise to power will soon become a decline.